Hello, guys. So here we are in a new format. And if you are brand new to this, you may be wondering what it is I'm talking about. So I have a podcast called Freeform Spiritual Wisdom. I've been doing it for about 20 months now. And when I became familiar that Google was moving their podcasts onto the YouTube format, I thought, well, maybe I'll start doing video podcasts again. So here we are. So you may have come to this particular episode through something that Google's done. You may have heard about it on my podcast. You may have caught it on one of my Instagram posts at Freeform Spiritual Wisdom. There's a number of ways you may have heard about it. But anyway, here we are. So today what I thought we would do is, even though you may be familiar with me on the podcast, maybe there's a lot of you who are not. So I'm going to do a couple things with this first episode here. I'm going to introduce myself, give you a little bit of background about who I am and how I've explored. I'll talk then about a couple different things. I'm going to split my time a little bit after that between sharing information that's for information that would be for people who are new in this exploration and people who've been doing this exploration for a bit of time. And even maybe I'll follow up on some of the more later podcasts and Instagram posts that I've done. So where to begin with me? So this journey for me is almost 30 years now. I began it. I used to be a chiropractor. Back in the 90s is when I started. And not too long into that, I had some issues myself that I was having difficulty taking care of in the more traditional ways, the more traditional chiropractic ways. And by following my intuition, we'll say, my impressions, my impulses, I was led to another chiropractor, an individual in town who introduced me to a method that I was not familiar with at the time. And so he had a lot of success with me. I inquired about the method. He led me in a direction where I could become familiar with it, learn about it. And so I did that. And in that, there were many different types of individuals that were at those classes, people who were doing all sorts of things, individuals who were doing homeopathy, individuals who work with herbs, individuals who didn't have really one particular discipline at all. They were using maybe applied kinesiology or something like that, other chiropractors, medical doctors, psychologists that were maybe utilizing these techniques. And so because of the mix of individuals, there was a lot of information that was shared. And so I utilize that information progressively when I get back into my practice as a chiropractor. And I was utilizing these ideas that I learned in this particular workshop that lasted approximately a year, maybe a year and a half. Anyway, as I get into that, I became familiar because I was effective with what I was doing. I had individuals come to me who were exploring a variety of things, and metaphysics and spiritual things were one of those. And so I began to explore that realm as a result of the things that they had shared with me. And so that, as you know, if you've done this journey for any length of time, then takes on a life of its own. And so I explored many, many things. The things that I explored initially, of course, were things that would help with healing individuals, but many different types of disciplines. I was doing many things. I was folding many things into what I was doing is I was interacting with individuals and helping them move beyond the things that were then showing up for them as various types of usually physical problems. But I was working with all sorts of stuff after a while. And I was changing the way that I was addressing that. And the approach that I had was more and more spiritually, metaphysically based all the time. And so that continued until finally I decided to leave that particular way of doing things, chiropractic, and explore life in a different way. And of course, my exploration into metaphysics continued and deepened. So I've explored many things. I'm familiar with all sorts of channel material, Seth's stuff, Elias's stuff, Chris's stuff, some Abraham's stuff, Bashar's stuff is probably the most recent, and many others as well. I became deeply familiar with the dream time concepts and ideas of the Aboriginals of Australia, explored dream time in a very deep way for a number of years, had a lot of very interesting experiences doing that, explored lucid dreaming a little bit, but not to a huge degree, explored information in various parts of Europe, information out of Africa, explored shamanism, South American shamanism, North American shamanism, deeply to a particular degree, had some very nice experiences as a result of that. Meditated for many, many years in a variety of different ways. Learned about, of course, the concepts of how all the things that we've been influenced by in our life have such a profound effect on us. Explored, I guess we could call it Hinduism, I guess basically. Probably you may or may not be familiar with a type of exploration called Gaudiya Vaishnavism. I explored for 6 years doing that. There's a whole variety of different layers of Hinduism. And so I've explored many, many, many different things. And in that, what my desire always was to continually move outside of the box. And what occurs, which you probably recognize as you've walked your own path, depending on how far into it you are, is initially, well, you're still going to be in a box because you're in physical reality. But I'll just say it like this. The box progressively gets larger. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and your exploration has more room, though you're still exploring within the box to some degree. And again, you kind of have to because you're still here in physical reality. So if you haven't gone to the podcast yet, if you're finding me for the very first time here on YouTube, I'm going to suggest that. I have quite a few episodes there. It'll give you some idea of the way that I share information, the context within I share it, the direction I share it from. What I attempt to do is to help you to understand as much about yourself as I possibly can, because that's really the key. Sure, you're going to be exposed to many individuals, myself included, that are going to share information with you. And I've always suggested, and I will do that now, that for those individuals who are really going to be effective in your life, what they're going to do is they're going to point you towards you. In other words, they're going to tell you that all of this information lies within yourself. And what they're going to do, what I endeavor to do, is to help you to get in touch with that to the greatest degree you possibly can, because it's all there. There is no teacher out there that has access to more information than you do. Now, you may not believe that in this particular moment, but I'm going to suggest to you that that's the truth. And so that's what I attempt to do. I attempt to provide you with information, with knowledge, with techniques that help you to get in touch with all those various aspects of yourself to a deeper degree, to widen your experience of life, to deepen your experience of life, to move beyond the challenge that you have, all the challenges that you have, especially the way that those challenges show up. Now, in actuality, you're not really going to leave challenges behind. What's going to happen is that your challenges are going to be different. You're going to experience them different. You'll feel different about what those challenges are. You'll perceive them much differently than what you do now as you become increasingly aware of who and what you are. And of course, it's a journey. And that really is part of this process. And by this process, what I'm talking about is physical reality, is that it is in this place, in this experience, it's about process. Because in our natural state, I'll just put it that way for now, there really is no process. As soon as you bring something into your mind, you're experiencing it. There's no lag between pulling something up in your imagination, maybe I'll use that word in this moment, and having it occur for you to be experienced. There's no lag. Here, in this particular experience, we've done that. We've created a lag on purpose. So we have process here. Okay. So you're going to experience process. Now, in this journey, especially if you've been on it for a long period of time, and by that I'm going to say over a decade anyway, a couple of decades at least, maybe. And it may not take that long for some individuals, especially I'll use this term now in this day and age, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. But as you've been on this journey, as you've explored this journey, what you'll find is that the length of your process changes, it alters. It doesn't have to be as long, as circuitous, as involved as what it used to be. It shortens up quite a bit. And that's because you don't need all the steps that you used to have before. You relax a little bit about things. You don't make it so much about all the things that you need to do. You begin to trust more that the rest of you, the inner you, the higher you, if you want to say that, the higher mind, the soul, the oversoul, there's many terms that you can apply. You begin to trust that that aspect of you largely has the reins in this particular exploration, right? As you become increasingly familiar with the interplay between this aspect of who you are and the deeper aspects of who you are, you begin to understand what I and some others call the mechanisms of consciousness. And so in that, you begin to relax into your process. And because of that, your process shortens up. Things happen more quickly. Information shows up more easily. Events show up more easily. Things like synchronicity become much more a part of your life, right? So with that little bit of an introduction, and maybe I'll add a little bit more as we go on, what I think maybe I'll start with is I'll start with individuals who may be a little newer in this exploration, and we'll kind of talk to you guys to start with. So if you're not already familiar, what you will be familiar with as you walk this journey, what you will become increasingly familiar with, because you'll hear it from me, you'll hear it from others, and maybe even without that, you'll learn it on your own, is that the challenges that you have because of the various influences that you have had in your life that have come from other people in other places, other situations and circumstances. They can come from your direct family members. They can come from your extended family members. They may have to do with the town that you live in, the state that you live in, the country that you live in, the culture that you live in. They may have to do with the race that you were born into. They may have to do with the time period that you were born into. There's many, many things. The sex that you were born into. There's many things that will influence how it is that you think and feel about yourself as an individual as you experience this particular existence. And so because a lot of that, but really depending on who you are, maybe it wasn't a ton, but it can be. So because a certain amount of that was of a challenging nature, in other words, it wasn't necessarily supportive or nurturing, right? It was judgmental in some particular way, shape, or form, right? It made suggestions that you were less than who you need to be or who you should be, perhaps. And these are concepts that we'll talk about, and I have talked about in the audio podcast, and we'll talk about in this particular podcast as well. So there were a lot of influences that you had in a lot of different ways from a lot of different individuals. And usually it's those individuals or those circumstances that are important to you that usually tend to make the largest impact on you, to be the most influential to you, right? And in that, what you will do is you will let go of the trust that you have in yourself, in the belief that you have in yourself, in the love that you have in yourself, to whatever degree that may have happened. It may be just a little bit, it may be a lot. You may be challenged very heavily with that because of the influences that you've had in this experience. So, of course, there's many, many ways that within physical reality, and I'm going to use a term here that we'll use at various times as we move forward in the podcast. And I'm going to use the term consensus reality. And when I use that term, what I'm meaning is the world that we experience, that is the world that considers itself to be a world about just the things that happen exteriorly, right? A world that is primarily based in logical, rational, intellectual ways of looking at things, right? That there is a physical world, it moves by particular guidelines, by particular rules, and all the things that happen within it happen because of the ways that we historically things happen in that reality. When I say consensus reality, this is what I'm talking about. So there are a number of ways that have been developed by individuals in consensus reality to help individuals deal with those. There's all sorts of chemicals that are applied, drugs, right, by various individuals. Of course, there are all those drugs that individuals use on their own, whether it's alcohol, marijuana, other types of drugs. There's many ways that people attempt to deal with the emptiness, the hollowness, the feeling within themselves that they know at some level really should feel different. And they do this in a whole variety of ways. So what I'm going to suggest to you, and what I'll talk about all the time in the podcast, is that, in my opinion, the epitome, the pinnacle way of approaching those challenges is through this exploration. And by that, what I mean is becoming increasingly familiar with who and what you are. Because all the information that you need, all the ability that you need to move in that direction lies within you. So how do I know that? Well, one of the ways I know that is because I've done it. And I've seen how my life has changed, how my experience of life has changed, how my experience of me has changed as I've moved deeper and deeper into my understanding of self. On that journey, I've also become very familiar with quite a number of other individuals who've done the same thing. And you notice their lives work out progressively better for them all the time. And when they have certain situations or challenges come into their lives, you see them meet those challenges in a different way, approach those challenges in a different way, not be thrown off by those, not maybe feel like you're a leaf being blown around by the wind all over the place, which many people can feel like that's what's going on. You don't understand why it is that you feel the way that you do. You don't know where to look for help in those situations, right? I'm going to suggest to you that this exploration holds the answers for you. Now, there's many, many ways that you can do this exploration. There's all sorts of methodologies out there, all sorts of spiritual practices out there. You may find yourself, as you do this, moving from one to the other, right? And I'll suggest that allow yourself to freedom to do that if that's what you feel like doing. You may be attracted to one particular type of exploration. It may seem like it has the answers for you at that moment, and it is going to provide for you some type of movement. Now, whatever the time span may be. It may be relatively briefly, or it might be after you've been doing it for a while. You may find it's not fitting your needs any longer. Okay. Learn to listen to yourself, because what's going to happen is that as you begin to explore things, the inner you is paying attention. It knows that that's what you're doing. It knows that you're looking for yourself. It knows you're looking for, I'll just use this word now, it, right? You're looking to understand, right? And it knows what you're exploring because it is you. You are it. It's totally aware of all the things that you're doing. And so as you explore and as you reach the boundaries of whatever it is you've chosen to explore, the inner you is going to give you those promptings to start to look around for other things. Try, if you can, to listen to those. Okay? You may have individuals who are very firmly adherent to a particular methodology, and they'll suggest to you, no, don't do that. Everything you need is here. I'll suggest to you that the inner you has the answers, right? As long as that's really what you're listening to. And you're going to get better at that all the time, all right? I'm also going to suggest to you that any individual in any discipline whatsoever who has your growth, your best interest at heart, is going to be fine with you walking away and exploring whatever you want to explore, because they know that if that particular type of exploration is what's really going to serve you best, you'll come back to it. So it's not really going to make a difference. If, on the other hand, those individuals are quite animate that you don't do that, you're going to know that to some degree, they're very invested in how they see things, how things need to be, what's going on for them. It's not necessarily about your growth, your awareness. It might be to some degree, but not, I'm going to suggest, to the degree that it needs to be. Okay? So allow yourself those things. Attempt to surround yourself with individuals who are also in whatever way, shape, or form exploring themselves, looking to have nicer experiences in their life. It might not be a spiritual journey. It might not be a metaphysical journey. It can be a whole variety of different things, right? But they have that kind of an outlook on their life, right? And there can be all sorts of mixtures that you may find in your life along those lines, right? So what you're going to find in this, especially in the early stages, in the first 5 years, in the first decade, is that there's a lot of information about who and what you are that is beyond what you think is really possible, that is beyond what you have heard in other places before. So to the degree that you can, allow yourself to be open to new information that comes into your life. Because really, when you're talking about the self, when you're talking about you, what you're talking about is you're talking about something that is infinite. There are no boundaries around you, right? So there is no box within that information that information sits within. There's no box whatsoever. Right now, the inner you, of course, also understands that here you are in physical reality. So there are these themes that are associated with physical reality, right, in this time and place. Okay, and it's going to utilize that as you get presented, as you discover information in various formats. It'll utilize that for you, right? But allow yourself to be okay with new stuff as it comes to you. You will know shortly into it if it's not really what you thought it was, if it's not really going to help you, if it's not really going to serve you. You'll know it won't take too long. So just trust that and be okay with just moving around a little bit and exploring various things in your life. Okay? So whatever methodology you choose to utilize, whatever way you choose to explore, that'll work fine for you. It'll build, it'll grow, and it'll expand of its own, right? That was my journey. As I look around at individuals who do things, I see that journey happening for them too. And of course, my experience is personal to me. So the degree that I saw that will be about my experience. But we do have a certain thread of kind of a commonality here in this experience, in this physical experience of this particular planet, in this particular way. There are some common themes, some common ways that we approach things, right? And so some of that information will be true, we'll say, I'll just use that word, to how it's being utilized, how it's being experienced by other individuals also in this reality. Okay. So if you've had a challenge of it, if it's been very challenging for you, and if you're looking around for ways to help yourself in that regard, I'm going to suggest to you that there is no better way. This exploration, this journey, this undertaking is really, I'll just say it like this, it's the ticket. It's the best thing you can do for yourself. Now, you have to practice it though, right? And I've used this metaphor in my podcast, in my audio podcast, and I'll use it again here. If, let's say, you want to learn something, it doesn't really make any difference what it is. You want to learn how to play an instrument. You want to learn how to paint. You want to learn how to become an electrician. You want to learn how to fix cars. You want to learn how to become a surgeon. You want to learn how to write novels. It really doesn't make any difference what it is. You want to learn how to do landscaping. Again, regardless of what it is. If you spend about half an hour a week doing that, after a year's period of time, you have a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of exposure, a little bit of understanding about what that's all about. But if you do that 7 days a week, 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day, whatever might happen to be, at the end of that same year, you have quite a bit, quite a depth of understanding of whatever it is you've chosen to come to a deeper understanding about. This exploration is the same. The fruits of the exploration, because of the experience that you're in, meaning physical experience, and having, especially in the beginning stages, a linear experience of that physical reality, you need to put the time in. You need to practice, right? Now, of course, that's up to you. You get to choose how you do that, how much time you actually put into it. I'll suggest to you that to get the kind of benefits that you want out of this particular exploration, what you want to do is you want to make the exploration, regardless of how you're doing it, the foundation of your existence. And then weave the rest of your existence into that. Okay, because it will give you the tools, it will give you the perspective to enjoy whatever it is you choose to do in your life in a much fuller way. It'll move you beyond your inhibitions. It'll move you beyond your worries, beyond your fears, right? Beyond your anxiety. It'll move you beyond all that stuff so that whatever it is you do, you will do it in a fuller way. So this is what you want to do. You want to practice. It's going to take practice, right? There's going to be all sorts of things. Now, as you move forward into that deeper exploration of who and what you are, one of the things that's going to happen is that you will become familiar with your seeming limitations, right? The things that you are utilizing, those influences that we talked about earlier, the things that you are utilizing to inhibit your experience of your existence, right? They're going to show up for you. Now, I'm going to suggest you don't have to go hunting for them. It's not necessary. They will show up of their own, right? And you'll know it. It's not going to feel very nice, right? You're going to have experiences that don't feel good to you, right? Feeling and emotional states are very much a part of what we're doing here. Now, I'm going to suggest to you, and I've explored this much deeper in the audio podcast. We'll talk a little bit about it here. So, various physical realities have various guidelines that are associated with them, various themes that are associated with them, various ideas that are associated with them. This particular physical reality, this may seem strange to you if you're really new to this exploration, that I would even say it like this, but this particular physical reality has feeling and emotion as a foundational part of the reality. Not all physical realities incorporate feeling and emotions as part of the reality. Ours does. So in that, it's a foundational part of our reality. It's a big part of it. Additionally, however, feeling states play another role in this particular reality. They are there to bring you information, moment by moment, in the moment. So as you are having an experience, the feeling state that you have going on in that moment is there to tell you about something. It's there to bring you information. Information usually about how you either are or are not interacting with the deeper parts of yourself while you're having that experience. Are you allowing that connection to be there, or have you moved away from it? Are you embracing instead an idea of yourself that says that you are vulnerable, that you are less worthy, right? That you are dumb, that you are incapable, right? That you are stupid, that there is something wrong with you, that you didn't see it correctly, that you, yes, in fact, should have done it this way instead. Whatever it might be, there's a huge list, correct? So that's what feelings are there to do also. They're there to cue you in, to give you some insight, if you understand how to use them in that way, about what it is in that moment. How are you using your psyche, shall we say? How are you using the mechanism of consciousness in that moment to bring yourself your reality around you? All right. That's what feelings will do. They're very helpful in that regard if you know how to use them in that. Right. So if what you've done is you've explored this for a longer period of time, if you've gotten to a place where you have some degree of experience that you are more than the body, you're beginning to have other types of experiences. Maybe you're very good at lucid dreaming. Maybe you do out-of-body explorations. Maybe you are very connected to nature and how nature is an expression of us. There's many, many things that you can do. There's many different ways that you can explore self once you start to explore self in this particular experience, physical experience. So if you're doing that, I'm going to suggest that there's a step that you may or may not already be familiar with, but I'll suggest it here, that the more that you can allow your life, your world, to be different, to be new in each moment, the more that you're going to get out of your reality. Now, that may take the form of you may walk into work and there have been changes that have happened in the workplace that you had no idea were going to go on. The idea is to accept those. Now, you may have to be a little bit investigative to see how they've changed and how things are now. There may be information that you weren't familiar with before if you allow yourself these larger types of shifts in your reality, right? So you may have to get a little bit creative on how you explore that information, right? Because everybody else, for those individuals, it's going to seem like this is just the way things have been going. For you, it's going to be new. And it can happen in many, many different places. It can happen in your house. It can happen at work. And it can happen outside. It can happen in your hometown. You can alter a whole variety of things. If you can just accept those differences, if you can accept those changes, if you can accept things that are unknown showing up in your life, things that are different showing up in your life, because this particular journey is really all about that. It's about different things showing up in your life all the time. Because if what you understand is that you are an expression, an extension, a focus of the inner you, the higher self, the soul, the oversoul, all that is, whatever you would like to say. If you understand that, then you'll know that those inner parts of you are always exploring new and unknown aspects of themselves, different vantage points of who and what they are. That theme, of course, then continues in the exploration that you're having here in physical reality. Now, at first, we resist that, right? It's pretty common knowledge in, again, consensus reality that people like things to be the same, right? We don't like surprises. We don't like differences, right? Why? Because we don't trust it, right? We have, in linear terms, a long history of things like that not turning out well for us. But as you continue to walk this journey, as you continue this type of an exploration with yourself, what you find is that those types of things make your exploration, make your life, make your experience much more exciting, right? It allows much more variegatedness to your experience. It allows a much fuller experience of your life to happen, not a narrow experience of your life, right? That box, again, becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, sometimes moment by moment by moment. And again, you are going to create yourself in some type of a box because you're here in physical reality. So there's going to be some guidelines that you're going to use, right? So this is what I'm talking about when I say box. But the easier it can be for you to just accept whatever change, whatever new thing, whatever unknown thing pops into your reality. And the higher mind, the inner you, is not going to do something that really shakes you up. It's not going to do something that's going to be traumatic for you, but it may be quite surprising for you, right? If you can allow those types of things, that will really help in your expansion of self, because really that's what self is all about, is that kind of exploration. So I think for today, for our first video in this particular format, I think we'll make it. I think this will be our chat for today. So again, I'm glad you guys decided to show up. I hope that your exploration is really nice. I hope it continues to grow for you. And again, what I will do here is I will share information for you in a way that hopefully you find helps that expansive process of your journey. So take care, have a great day, and I'll see you guys next time around.